The forest was quiet, the kind of silence that only the wild can hold, deep and almost unnatural. The evening sun dipped low in the sky, casting an orange hue over the vast expanse of the mountain range. The air was crisp and fresh, filled with the scent of pine, moss, and the earthy smell of the forest floor. A single bird call broke the quiet before fading into the distance, and then there was only the rustling of leaves in the wind. Among the towering trees, a mother lion moved with purpose. Her coat, golden brown with streaks of sun-kissed tawny, blended seamlessly into the earth beneath her feet. Her paws were silent on the forest floor, accustomed to stealth, accustomed to the hunt. She was a creature of the wild, a predator, a survivor. But today, she wasn't hunting. Today, she wasn't stalking her prey. Today, she was desperate. Her amber eyes flicked toward the hollow beneath the towering pine trees, where her cub lay hidden. The small lioness, no more than a few months old, lay motionless, her small body trembling in the cold mountain air. Her fur was dull, her once playful eyes now heavy with weakness. The illness had taken hold swiftly, draining her of the strength she once had, and now, with every shallow breath she took, the mother could feel time slipping away. The mother lion stood, her powerful frame rigid with a mix of fear and resolve. She had done everything she could, hunted for food, coaxed her cub to drink, and kept her warm against the cold. But nothing had worked. Her cub, so young and fragile, was fading fast. In the back of her mind, a whisper began to form, a thought she had never entertained before. The humans. She had heard their voices before, their distant chatter and strange sounds echoing through the forest. They came with their tools and machines, always out of place in the wilderness, always a reminder of a world she didn't belong to. She had observed them from afar, always cautious, always keeping her distance. But now, with her cub's life hanging by a thread, the mountain lion had to face a painful truth. She couldn't save her cub on her own. Her heart weighed heavy with the thought. Trusting humans was dangerous, unfamiliar. But the pain of watching her cub suffer, of seeing her life slip away slowly, was unbearable. She had no choice. With one final glance at her cub, the lioness turned and disappeared into the shadows of the trees, her movements swift and deliberate. She would go to the humans. She would do whatever it took to save her cub. As the moonlight filtered through the thick canopy of trees, David sat by his campfire, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. He had been living in these mountains for years, studying wildlife and working as a wildlife conservationist. The isolation didn't bother him. It was peaceful, and the work was meaningful. The only things that ever broke the quiet were the occasional deer, the distant call of an owl, or, more often than not, the looming presence of the mountain lions. He knew the land well. He had seen the tracks, the unmistakable signs of the elusive predators that ruled these mountains. But tonight, something felt different. Something in the air had changed. It wasn't the usual rustle of the night. It wasn't the usual sounds of the forest. It was a shift, a presence. He glanced over his shoulder into the shadows of the trees. The air seemed thick with anticipation. He stood slowly, his heart suddenly racing. There was something out there. He could feel it. As he reached for his rifle, a movement in the trees caught his eye. At first, it was only a flicker, something too fast to catch. But then, there she was, the lioness. She stepped out from the shadows, her golden eyes fixed on him, unblinking. Her body was tense, her muscles coiled, but there was no aggression in her stance. She wasn't here to hunt. For a moment, neither moved. David's breath caught in his chest, unsure of what to do. His gaze met hers, and in that brief, silent moment, he saw something he hadn't expected: fear. Raw, unfiltered fear in the lioness' eyes. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she took a slow, measured step forward, her head lowering slightly, a gesture that caught him off guard. A soft growl rumbled in her throat, a sound not of warning, but one of desperation. David's eyes widened as he realized the gravity of the situation. The lioness was asking for help. He didn't understand how, but there was no mistaking it. She needed something from him, something he had the power to give. With caution, David lowered his rifle, slowly raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice calm yet filled with a quiet urgency. "What can I do for you?" Without a word, the lioness turned and walked into the darkness. David hesitated for only a moment before he followed, his instincts telling him that this was not a moment to question, but to act. The journey through the forest was swift. The lioness moved with the precision and grace that only a creature of the wild could possess, her body cutting through the underbrush with ease. David kept up as best as he could, his heart pounding in his chest. The further they moved into the forest, the more the air seemed to thicken, the night growing colder and heavier with each step. After what seemed like an eternity, they arrived at a small clearing where the cub lay. David's heart sank at the sight of the small lioness, her tiny body barely moving. She was sick, far too frail for her age. Her breaths were shallow, and her once playful eyes were barely open. The lioness stood back, her amber eyes fixed on the cub, then on David. She didn't need to speak. He understood. David knelt beside the cub, his hands trembling as he checked her vitals. Her small body was cold, her fur matted and damp. He could feel the fever radiating from her, and he knew time was running out. "I'm going to help her," David said softly, though he wasn't sure if the lioness understood. But he had to try. He reached into his bag and pulled out a few herbs, ones he had used for similar situations. He crushed them between his fingers, preparing a paste that would help the cub's weak body fight the illness. David's hands were steady, despite the fear that gripped him. Slowly, gently, he applied the mixture to the cub's mouth. The lioness watched intently, her body coiled and tense, her eyes never leaving her cub. Minutes passed. The cub remained still, its body barely moving. David's heart pounded in his chest, each second stretching into eternity. But just as he was about to give up, a small twitch of the cub's paw caught his attention. Then another, and another. The cub's tiny eyes fluttered open, and for the first time in days, David saw a glimmer of life. The lioness stepped forward, her body relaxed for the first time that night. She lowered her head, nudging her cub gently with her nose, her eyes filled with something deep, something David couldn't quite place. Gratitude? Relief? Perhaps it was all of that, and more. But the one thing that was clear was that this mother, this wild creature of the forest, had placed her trust in him. And he had delivered. As dawn began to break over the mountain peaks, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, David stood silently, watching the lioness and her cub. They had survived the night, but the wild was never kind for long. There would be more challenges ahead, more struggles to face. For now, though, there was a moment of peace, and that was all that mattered. The mountain lion had gotten what she needed, a second chance for her cub. And, in return, David had witnessed something rare, an unspoken bond between the wild and humanity, forged in the quietest moments of desperation and hope. This story is a reminder of the incredible bonds that can form between humans and wildlife. If you were moved by the mountain lion's desperate plea, share it with others who care about the wild. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful wildlife stories and join us in supporting nature's wonders.